Time for our roundtable discussion. Here with us today, a newbie, Angela Rye, General Counsel for the Congressional Black Caucus. Pulitzer Prize-winning Chicago Tribune columnist Clarence Page. He's always happy to sit between two women. Joining us next is Cynthia Gordy, senior political correspondent for theroot.com, and stuck way on the far end, Dr. Chris Metzler, political scientist at Georgetown University. And as you can see, Chris is rocking the pink tie and the blue shirt. That's Clarence, right. Last time we were here, Chris had a really rough outfit. And luckily, Mickey Taylor of Essence Magazine was here, so she gave him a quickie makeover.
Oh, I should have been there then.
Yeah, we had to hook him up, so he's been dressing a lot better since Mickey hooked him up.
Yeah. I'm still wearing the same tie I wore last time, by the way.
Let's get right to it. Very interesting week in politics. Obviously, Mitt Romney has pretty much solidified himself as being the Republican nominee. And one of the huge issues is education. So here's what the president had to say on the issue of education. And then right now, we'll go to what Mitt Romney had to say. But first, the president at the University of North Carolina.
They need to extend the tuition tax credit that we put in place back when I came into office. Amen. It's saving middle-class families thousands of dollars. Congress needs to safeguard aid for low-income students like Pell Grants, so that today's freshmen and sophomores knows that they'll be able to count on it. Congress needs to give more young people the chance to earn their way through college by doubling the number of work-study jobs over the next 5 years.
Mitt Romney won 5 primaries on Tuesday. Here's what he had to say about education in his victory speech.
This America is fundamentally fair. We will stop the unfairness of urban children being denied access to the good schools of their choice.
So, what role do you think education will actually play? Will it be a critical discussion in this election?
I think so far it has been a critical issue in discussion with the student loan interest rates issue that came up this week. The president has put out, to the students that he wants to keep their interest rates low, even though it will be costly to Congress. He's saying that investing in that attribute for students is more important right now than focusing on balancing the budget on their backs. Meanwhile, Mitt Romney came around to that point of view, but originally he was against that. And originally he wanted to cut Pell Grants, he wanted to cut education programs in the interest of the deficit. So I think that's a fundamental difference around education that's already played out.
Imagine the very notion of Mitt Romney changing his position on something. But Mitt Romney wasn't alone on this. John Boehner had been, and the rest of the Republicans, they all endorsed the Ryan budget, which calls for a return of student loans to the 8% rate, and cutting Pell Grants. And all of a sudden this week, John Boehner came out and said, "There's never been an argument over this. Of course, we're not going to let the student loan rates go up," and acted like it had been a Republican idea all along. So Barack Obama's barnstorming of 3 different campuses in 3 different swing states apparently has had an impact on pushing that debate along. The argument there is over how to pay for it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that
one college professor on our panel.
Yeah, the whole idea of Republicans being against education, I don't think is accurate. I absolutely don't think it's accurate. The question is, how do you approach education? A couple of points. First of all, the Department of Education, I think everyone can agree that the Department of Education can be cut. There are things that can be done that need to be returned to the states.
I won't say everyone can agree, but go right ahead.
Yeah, okay. But
you want to cut Pell Grants?
No, I don't want to cut Pell Grants.
That's what Ryan's budget calls for.
But Ryan's budget was at least a starting point. It was a point of discussion. So at least we're now having the discussion relative to education. So I think to say that Republicans are fundamentally against education just isn't accurate.
I don't think anyone said that. And I think the most important thing that we're talking about today is a bill that's actually being considered, and that is the student interest rate bill. So for us to be in a situation right now where we have potentially on the table a doubling of a 3.4 interest rate for students when we already are suffering from a bad economy, we can't afford it. This is an easy lift. The problem is the Republicans have tied the Affordable Care Act to this because they want to piecemeal repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Well, so there's a disagreement about how to pay for it. Right. That's the fundamental disagreement. Right. So the fundamental disagreement is about how to pay for education. That's the disagreement.
That disagreement about how to pay for it only came out after the president basically reached out to college students and made sure that every student in America knew that he was on their side on this issue. And it looked bad for Republicans to be against it. So it's not like they were always for this.
I do want to get your thoughts on this, because in that clip, Mitt Romney talked about the whole issue of school choice. And what's very interesting is when you look at low-performing schools, significant number of those affect African-American children. When we were on Air Force One with the president, I think it was in 2009, Cynthia, I asked the president about his opposition to the D.C. school vouchers. And I said, Mr. President, look, this is the way I feel about education. I like public school, private school, home school, online, charters, magnets, vouchers, I don't care. I believe educate a kid any way possible. I do think that if Republicans can make a more substantive argument when it comes to school choice, and if they are able to say, forget this whole notion of anybody gets to go. If I'm them, I would say the bottom 5%. So we're going to ignore the top 95%, but the worst of the worst should be able to send their kids to a much better school. I think it's going to force Democrats to have a different conversation when it comes to what are you supporting when it comes to the education of folks, poor whites, but also poor African Americans and Hispanics.
Yeah, because the whole issue of school choice, I mean, the biggest lobby against school choice are public school teachers and public school unions. That's the biggest lobby against school choice. But I think you're absolutely right, Roland. The question is educating that bottom 5%, because the rest of folks are going to do what they're going to do. The question is, what are they skilled to do? This notion that everyone should go to a 4-year college, as I've heard some of my colleagues say, just isn't accurate, because that's not the place for everyone to be.
Go ahead.
I think that the one place that we have to start, we talk about what the Democrats' position has to change to. We have a situation where the party has advocated for fairness and access. And I don't think fairness and access is open just to the bottom 5%. That's not fairness and access for all.
Here's the deal. I'm down for fairness and access, but what I'm saying is I'm looking at people, looking at parents, and they have children who are going to absolutely sorry schools and not getting results. And for me, it's offensive when somebody says, hey, we're working on it, give us some time. If my kid's in the 3rd grade and you have a 8-year plan, they're then going to be
too late.
11th grade or even done by the time this is all over. That's the concern
about this. Every time school choice comes up, I feel a sense of deja vu all over again. Roland, in the 1980s, polls were showing most urban parents, read Black and Hispanic parents, supported the idea of choice, as long as it didn't take vouchers, as long as it didn't take money away from the public schools. They support choice, and that is still true. Yeah, overwhelmingly Democratic in their vote, but very much pro-choice. You're absolutely right. It's the teachers' unions that have blocked vouchers from being implemented across the country. And you know, that darn debate really hasn't moved much since the 80s, even though some places like Milwaukee, Cleveland, other cities have gotten some voucher programs going, and it's gaining in popularity. It's still true that the Democrats are the union party, and they're not about to go up against the teachers' union on something like this. And Republicans are the party that favors vouchers, but they don't have those inner city urban parents in their ranks.
Hold tight 1 second.